Hi, I'm Stuart Elliott, the editor-in-chief of The Real Deal. Today I'm here with Drew Lang, the founder of Lang Architecture. Drew designs homes in the Hudson Valley, in New York City, and New Orleans. And his Hudson Woods project, which was 26 modern homes he developed in the Hudson Valley, generated a lot of buzz and recently sold out. As we all know, there's been no shortage of people heading out of the city since COVID began. And along with that, more interested in people building their own places. So we thought we'd get some pro tips from Drew today. Drew, welcome.
Thank you, Stuart. Glad to be here.
So Drew, what's going on with the housing market kind of generally in the Hudson Valley recently? Are you seeing more people building homes?
The market's hot. There's no other way of saying it. And we were seeing the market heat up for a long period of time before COVID, over 5-6 years prior to COVID. The acceleration that took place in COVID is remarkable. It persists. I don't think it's going to continue persisting forever. It's going to die down, at least the frenzy that's taking place right now at some point. I think the interest has a really long tail. It still has a long way to go. And a lot of it has to do with the area having sat dormant for so long and so much opportunity remaining in the way of available land and the cost of that land and the housing stock being attainable for a lot of people.
Are you seeing different types of people building homes today, or more people aiming for spec homes that normally would just rent for the summer and that sort of thing?
The people who we're talking to are building homes for themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're weekend homes. Of course, weekend homes in COVID takes on a new dimension. And even before COVID, interestingly, people were talking to us about splitting their time between being away from the city and being in their home away from the city and being in the city, right? So sort of 3 to 4 day stint out of the city and an equivalent stint in the city, right? And so I think what's really nice about COVID is it's made that a reality. It's made people's fantasy a reality in that regard.
Somebody labeled that co-primary homes or co-primary living or something like that, which is interesting. So what are the steps you see that people need to take in building a home? You know, obviously one of the first pieces is identifying a piece of land, but where would you kind of get started?
Yeah, even before buying a piece of land, it makes sense to spend some time researching what area you want to be in and weekending up there, renting homes, staying in inns, staying in friends' houses, asking around, talking to friends, walking around in different towns and identifying the area that feels right to you, where you want to be. And then the next step is finding a piece of land, generally with a broker, then coming together with a lender and a local attorney. A civil engineer is a resource that people will generally need early on in the process to confirm that they can access water and dispose of their waste, either connect to a municipal sewer or in most cases build a septic system.
How do you time that stuff? So say you're engaging a real estate broker, they're taking you around, you see a plot of land you like. Do you bring on the lawyer, engineer, architect, prior to going into contract? What kind of the sequence of how that would work?
Well, everyone's a little bit different, and most people take it incrementally. Mm-hmm. We recommend pooling resources at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So when people come to us in the beginning of their process, which we very much like them to do, we're at least telling them about all the resources they'll need and providing them with those resources. Mm-hmm. A local attorney contact, a civil engineer contact, a local general contractor contact to have an initial conversation with, things of this sort. Sometimes people who are extremely busy will hire us to do all of this for them, including identifying land, vetting the land, and presenting to them a final selection, vetted selection of land to purchase. But most people go through the process themselves, and it takes longer than most people think. It takes, 6 months roughly, can take longer. As much land as there is out there, it's a big decision to make, right? So you want to see a good selection of land before you make your decision.
Yeah. And an engineer is going to tell you what you can build and in some of the infrastructure issues, right? What's a lawyer going to tell you? Zoning and, in addition to helping you close an actual transaction?
With a lawyer, it's going to tend to be straightforward if it's just a single family house. If someone wants to do multiple structures on a piece of land or subdivide their land, then the lawyer's work gets more complicated.
And what do you need to know, if you're building upstate about zoning and, like, are there a lot of tricky things there? I mean, obviously a lot of rural places like to limit development in general. Anything people need to keep in mind there?
It varies town to town. And what we recommend people do, and we do this for people when they hire us, is just go onto the town website where they're looking at land, and you can generally download the zoning code. And if you have the patience to read through it, it's understandable for the most part. It really is quite clear. Interestingly, we're working with someone right now who has over 100 acres of land. It has an existing structure, a historic structure on it. That structure is a house as the town defines it. And what's interesting about it is that the new house that they want to build turns out is not buildable unless they subdivide their land, unless they create another building lot, separately deeded building lot. And so in this instance, the civil engineer and the local attorney are needed in order to get that done.
So say you make it through that whole part of the process and you're actually going to sit down and designing your house. What are you seeing people want more of these days? How is design changing? And, especially kind of in the COVID era?
Home offices. The other thing that people are wanting more and more, and we're seeing some of this pre-COVID, but even more right now, is vegetable gardens, greenhouses, lots of indoor, outdoor spaces, right? So decks, patios, and large glass expanses to connect their indoor spaces to the outdoors. Even a separate guest house is sometimes we'll frequently see.
And finally, is there any, for people that are coming from the city, which, is a big part of our audience, any other tips you have? I mean, is the pace of what happens there, different from the city? Can you expect, I guess building always takes longer than you expect anyway, right?
It does. And things move some fraction of a pace that they do in the city out there, right? So it's good to brace yourself and expect that's going to be the case. The other thing that people from the city might not be mindful of is what it means to own and maintain a house. I think we take this for granted when we live in the city. We live in a building, there's a staff and they take care of the building, right? So there are a lot of things that we don't think of. But when you own a home, you need to be mindful of all the things that you need to maintain.
Anything on the construction side that can, help with that?
Oh, absolutely. Right. If you're doing an extensive renovation or a new build, then you can mitigate sort of maintenance that you're going to be looking at, right? Being mindful of the materials utilized and especially the types of natural woods and stones, making sure that selections are made that are maintenance friendly.
Well, if you've done all that, then you've got your dream home. So that's great. Well, thank you, Drew. Thanks for walking us through that. And thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Stuart.